Thank you, Marion, Hilda, and thank everyone who's taken part. I'm going to start by referring back to Ephraim and Manasseh. It's something terribly important to understand. And it leads us really into the next chapter for the Jewish people, and it leads you and I into the next chapter of our nation and humanity as we come out of this unknown COVID-19 era. And perhaps that is exactly what Torah is teaching us, because it was completely out of the norm. It didn't happen that a grandfather would bless his grandchildren. In fact, he put them on the same level as his sons. It was completely untoward. And then that he should switch his hands and once more repeat the peculiar history where it was unknown that the younger son would get the blessing and the double portion, and the older son would also be blessed. But again, this is Torah telling us that we are facing the unknown in this pandemic. May the year 2022, may we have the strength that we heard the Jewish people are blessed with, when one era ends and another begins. And I truly believe for humanity, another era is beginning with the slow, Baruch Hashem, death of the virus and this era. So what we are being told by the reversal of a tradition is that the future is totally and utterly unknown. And we have to be prepared by standing firm in our beliefs, in a good God, that the future will be good and it will be even better. Now, I'd just like to share that there are different thoughts, again, on why this blessing was reversed. Rabbi Simson Raphael Hirsch, 19th century Germany, offers another explanation why Jewish boys now going to every generation of Jews to come in all the centuries ahead of us. On a Friday night, they will receive the blessing that they should grow up to be like Ephraim and Manasseh. There's another good reason which is parallel to where we are today. The first generation of Jews, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, raised their children primarily in what was to be the land of Israel. Now, it's said today that the Holy Land is the best Jewish environment. And the Talmud even says when you're in the Holy Land, and it's true, and especially in Jerusalem, even the air makes you wise. In one sense, being Jewish in Israel is very easy. All our holidays are recognized. Our Shabbat, our day off a week starts on a Friday night, etc., etc. But when you are in the diaspora, as you and I are now, and just about 50% of the Jewish people are, it is not so easy, maybe, to maintain your Jewish identity, and even more importantly, to follow the just ways of Torah, to be kind to each other, to be kind to the beggar, as we are doing every Thursday, Baruch Hashem, in the most magnificent way, under Marion's leadership, and as every religion in this country is doing throughout South Africa. But as Jacob and his family were now going to move to Egypt and spend their years there, the next generation would be surrounded by pagan immorality. So that was the challenge to Judaism, is to survive amidst all the distractions of diaspora life. So this is why we are looking at generation to generation to generation. So people, I think, rather sadly, because they miss the point totally, say the issue is not whether you have Jewish children, but whether you have Jewish grandchildren. In other words, they are actually questioning the future of the Jewish people. But you see, God has amazing ways to ensure that. And in this, the character of Jacob actually is the character of the Jewish people. So, the book of Bereshit ends on a sublime note of reconciliation between Jacob's sons, Joseph's brothers. They all were reconciled. This crucial moment is the history of a religion. As we heard in my drusha last week, it certainly marks the birth of forgiveness. We've had paying back for what you did wrong by perhaps giving someone money, but this is the first time we heard last week in the drusha I gave that it was the birth of forgiveness. But actually, it's something much, much more important. It is the important principle, the idea of divine providence. And this is really what Jacob emphasized. He understood through all his adversities, through all the unjust treatment he had, etc. History is not just a bag of coincidences. It has a point. Perhaps God is working behind the scenes. There is a divinity that shapes our end, as said in Hamlet, rough-hewn as that will be. Joseph's greatness was that he sensed the bigger picture. He understood instinctively that nothing in his life happened by accident. The plot to kill him, his sale as a slave, the accusation by Potiphar's wife, etc., etc., etc. It was necessary steps in perhaps the achievement of a divine plan. It was also necessary steps of humanity growing to understand what to do so that we could survive. So, his depths of this despair never turned into a complete depression, giving up and saying, that's it, there's nothing to go for. No matter where he was, the future was uncertain, he didn't know. But his greatest strength was he never, ever gave up hope or faith. Now, I know we've heard that many times, but that is the heart of the prayer we say when we end a book, each book of the 5 books of Moses. It's telling us to be strong. That strength means surviving adversity, being firm in the face of adversity. Joseph had in double measure, and I think that is referring as well to the blessing he received as his father's favorite, the necessary gifts of the greatest gift of any leader, and that is the ability to keep going despite opposition, despite envy from his brothers, false accusation, and repeated setbacks. Every great leader will face opposition. It is inevitable. So, in fact, the late great Rabbi Jonathan Sacks, who understood our prophetic mission as a light unto the nations, that he had to go and talk to the wider world, the wider community. He had to discuss politics. And therefore, in his series of TED Talks, which were brilliant, he became renowned, and he brought fame and honor and respect to our religion for the values he taught. And he said the following, talking about a wider society: a leader elected to make society more equitable will most certainly win the support of the poor. In other words, if the leader is elected because his task is to see that the poor are fed, to see that the landless get land, etc., he will definitely antagonize the rich. On the other hand, if the leader is elected to reduce a tax burden, he will do the opposite. He will upset the poor because he's going to make the rich wealthier. Politics without conflict is a contradiction in terms. Rabbinical leadership, may I say, without conflict, any leadership is a contradiction in terms. Any leader elected to do anything, any leader more loved or gifted than others, will face envy. Rivals will question, why wasn't it me? As we saw with Korach, he thought he knew better than Moses and Aaron. It was the brothers thought about Joseph that the fathers favored them. But I'm sure you understand the point, that this pettiness is not the point. The point is that there is a bigger divine plan, and provided your motivation, your heart, your desire to do justice, not only for yourself, but for others around you, for your Jewish people, but equally for the rest, then you are playing your part in preparing for the future generations. Because our deeds, our words, what we decide to work for, what we decide to champion, will live on. Throughout history, people who were in advance of their time have been demonized, as indeed even Mandela is being demonized today by those who say, he was a sellout. But to be even more dramatic, we can look at, and I've got this down, they put the Salem SALEM witch trials in 1692. They put those women to death. And all they were doing were trying to help people. And after that, long after their death, a priest admitted years later that such was the darkness of the day that we were in the clouds and could not see the way. Now, I must say the most famous false accusation of modern times, and this directly impacts our Jewish nation and where we will go and how we face adversity, was the trial of Dreyfus, a French officer of Jewish descent who was accused of being a German spy. And I'm sure you all know about it. The Dreyfus affair rocked France during 1894 and until 1906, when Dreyfus was fully acquitted. But why did they choose him as a scapegoat to protect a French officer who'd actually killed someone in the army? There was anti-Semitism. That was the face of the anti-Semitism of the day. And as we know, hatred of the other, and it's horrific face of anti-Semitism. It is also the face of Islamophobia today. It is also the face of xenophobia. And we who have experienced, who've been there, must bring this message that it has to stop. But everything is still on a divine plan. because it was Dreyfus's trial that led to a young journalist, Theodore Herzl, non-religious. It thrills me, and perhaps I'm being a bit naughty here, that Ben Gurion wasn't religious. Theodore Herzl wasn't religious. And God chose them as vehicles. What is he saying? That every Jew, religious or not, has within their very bones, within their very marrow, the history of our patriarchs of Torah. It can never, ever be taken out. And Theodore Herzl, who had practically what today they would say, he was nearly integrated, he wasn't religious. No. Understanding Torah, following its laws, whether you're religious or not. And I believe that is the way the world is going, and the greatest diaspora in the world today, the American Jewry, know that. All streams of Judaism count. But Theodore Herzl, from this one act, which showed the face of hatred of the other, led to the establishment, generations later, of the modern state of Israel. How can we not see a divine plan behind our own personal adversities or the adversities of our nation? And that must be the adversities of other nations as well. One of my greatest mentors, and I have mentors who are alive and who have passed on, is Winston Churchill. And he said, success is the ability to go from one failure to another with no loss of enthusiasm. So now I'd like to conclude and share with you a saying that I have in my room, because you see, the greatest leadership trait is persistence. It's not giving up in the face of adversity. And that, I think, you must agree. And I'd like to now end with the words of Calvin Coolidge, the 20th President of the United States, 1923. And listen to his words, because it is an accolade to the Jewish nation. It is an accolade to Hashem's justice. And it is an accolade above all to the survival of humanity. Nothing in the world can take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, press on, has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. And so, the willingness to let events work themselves out in accordance with this providence. As we in the Jewish faith know, we are co-authors, we are creators of not only our lives, but very importantly for us and humanity, future generations with Hashem. This unbelievable ability to persist in his faith in the goodness of God, to persist in an ultimate justice, allowed Joseph to survive without resentment or despair. Trust in God gave him the immense strength of persistence, the most important characteristic of any leader. And I'd like to just conclude there by saying that I know so many people with us today have persisted with faith in their ideals, their dreams, their goals, their belief in goodness, their belief in justice, their belief in saying, I'm sorry if they made a mistake, forgiving themselves and others. And with this persistence and faith in the ultimate destiny of mankind, which is survival, which is goodness, which is justice, may we look forward to many, many, many Shabbats to come, and to a new year, 2022, a new beginning, a new understanding, but never giving up the absolute faith that tomorrow is a beautiful place. Shabbat Shalom. Back to you, Marian.